Awesome. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our last workshop of ASA's workshop series for the year. So we're ending with a really awesome one. It's called All Eyes on You, and this is solely about visual performance and choreography. So same as the other panels that we've had this week, it's going to be an hour. We're gonna do, I have some questions for them for about 45 minutes, and then we'll open it up to all of you guys to ask any questions that you might have. You can use the chat, you can raise your hand, or you can just unmute and ask your questions during that time. Um, yeah, so we're gonna get started. So I'm gonna first ask all of my panelists to introduce themselves very briefly, just tell me, say your name, what team you're on, what you're excited about. We can start with Harry because he's the first person on my screen.
Lovely. Yeah. All right. I'm Harry. I am a junior on the Hum A Cappella at Case Western Reserve University. It'll be my third year on the team. I'm going to be music director this upcoming year, so I'm really excited to be doing a lot of like captain work with the team. I'm really excited to be here and chat choreo with everyone today.
That's really awesome. Next on my screen is Sagarika.
Hi guys, I'm Saagarika. I'm a sophomore in UJ Gullikar, and this is going to be my second year on the team. And I'm going to be the creative director, and I'm really excited because I've also been helping out with arranging this year. So yeah, very excited for this upcoming year.
Oh, that's super awesome. Next on my screen is Dina.
Hi everyone. I'm Dina. I also go by Dinah, so whatever works. And I'm the choreo director on UT Hum. I was last year and now I'm going into my senior year. And yeah, I'm really excited to talk with you guys about choreo.
Yay. And finally, we have Dia.
Hi guys, I'm Diya. I was on UNC Samaa for 2 years. I'm not going to be on it this upcoming year, but I was creative director last year. Um, and I'm a rising senior as well at UNC.
Awesome. That's super exciting. So my first question to you guys is when and where did you first start off when thinking about your team's visual performance for the upcoming year? Or since Dia, you won't be in the upcoming year or previous years. Whoever wants to go first.
Okay, I can start this one. So I grew up a dancer and very in tune with music guiding how I dance. And I also actually am on the dance team at UNC, so or like the Bollywood Fusion one. So I do a choreography when I've been captain on the team. And that has kind of guided my process. So like I did have a bit of a unique start because I came as a dancer onto the team. And when I started, like because music has been my inspiration for dance moves specifically, it also like the initial arrangement was what I just sat and listened to for so long, like over and over again. But specifically, like I am a very much believer in how the music or the visuals make you feel is what the audience is going to remember. But what was unique about this is that also you're moving and you're singing, so you have a new part of your body that you have to keep more in control, which is like your diaphragm area. Um, and also, if you're a soloist, like you're gonna have to be highlighted while also not doing too much so that you're able to sing and really stand out. And that was where I began actually making visuals, which was like, okay, I want my soloists to be highlighted when they need to be highlighted in singing, but obviously you don't want that the entire song. So like when it comes to specific parts of the song where maybe the arrangement itself or like different highs and lows in the arrangement were the special part. Like that was what I wanted the focus to be on. Then I made the choreography very like complementary to that. So if we're doing like a beautiful, like passionate moment, I want a little bit more movement on stage so that it looks bigger, so that it sounds bigger. I feel like visuals very, very much aid in how you sound as well. And also like there are things where if you're moving, right, like you're not going to have as much breath control. So like you need to make sure that you're singing notes that would require maybe less breath control or like less like lower notes, something where it's complementary to what you're doing so that you're also aiding your sound in a more technical manner. And all of those things, like I consider them at first, but ultimately, what you have to start with is just a baseline choreography and then modify as you go on, because you're never going to know if it actually works unless you put it to the test. So I think I went through like a couple of variations with the whole team there. I use an app called For to make formations. Um, and then I like just try them out with the people there. I assign names on the app too. And if it doesn't work, we change it. And I always like you just ask the dancers or the singer's feedback on it. Um, and if it does work, then maybe enhance it a little bit and think of like more musical points. I also didn't mention this before, but I also was the VP on the team. So like it did help that I could create the beats and also choreograph to the beats. So that was another big thing.
That was so impressive. Um, but yeah, Harry, Sagarika, Dina,
Yeah, I can like totally relate to the whole like starting off as a dancer, because I like came into the team like with a lot of like Bharatanatyam experience. So like going into the team, I like definitely like wanted to lean into more of like the visual aspects of things. Um, and like being able to combine like both my passions was definitely something that like was like a very like driving factor for me. I would say that like we usually like create the arrangement first and see like certain aspects of the music where there's like more of like a climax, where there needs to be more emphasis on the soloist versus on the like ensemble. And so based on that, we have like more broader like movements or more like enclosed movements that are like more focused on the soloist. And then also we have to consider like how lighting's gonna play into that. Like, do we want a spotlight on like the soloist, or do we want something more like impactful and like colors and all of that sort of stuff? So I think at first we really just like kind of like just throw in ideas to each other and see which ones work with one another. And yeah, again, like the trial and error is like very much a big part of this whole entire like process. We also use like the app for me for our like formations as well. So we'll initially just like draft up something and see if it works. And then if it does, it does. If it doesn't, we make changes accordingly. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I meant, oh, sorry, Harry, do you have anything you want to add?
I think, yeah, I think a lot of what they were saying is really, really important. I think as someone, I came from like an ICHSA background, so like I did competition a cappella in high school, and then I came to college, and I'm now participating in, ASA circuit, and there is a difference there, but I think at the end of the day, it always is about putting the music first. So in terms of timeline and like when do you start with your choreo throughout the year, I would definitely say start early enough to where you as a, maybe potential choreography director or as someone who is teaching choreography to people who maybe are less choreographically inclined, it's important to make sure you are familiar enough with what you are teaching to be able to say it concisely and effectively, but also that your team meet them where they're at. Like if you're having trouble, memorizing an arrangement, maybe hold off on choreo until you are totally comfortable with singing, and then you can add a second element to it.
No. I completely agree with that. I think I'm like I'm like on the same page with Harry is that like at the end of the day it is about the music and as someone who is a dance background, I mean like Kuchipudi, all of that, like classical dance, there have been times when as a choreo director I'm like, okay, I need to take a second and realize that like if they look good, awesome, but we need to sound good too. I think that's a later question coming up that we can dive more into. But in terms of just like where we start, I think that something I made that for Hum specifically, I guess, which I think it goes for everybody, but I know that Hum, at least in my 4 years, has been very storyline kind of heavy. Like we really like to have a either storyline or theme. So going into last year, we had that in mind that we wanted to do like, okay, maybe murder mystery, and then it kind of turned into Clue. But we usually start with a storyline or like kind of an idea of what songs and a storyline or theme, and then we do the choreography, which um, I usually, or at least last year, try to kind of pull together in the fall while the arrangements are coming together so I can talk with the musical director about that while we create it. And then eventually have like a base choreo, kind of like what Thea mentioned. And then as we do more, tweak that and like try to put that into like, competition ready versus just, okay, here's this chalk circles on the board and you're that chalk circle and you're gonna move side to side. But yeah, it all pulls together towards the end. But in terms of where and when to start, usually for us it's theme and then mostly in the fall.
That actually is a perfect segue into my next question for you guys. What's your sort of general thought process behind larger choreography formations and fitting it with a theme or an arrangement? So, do you guys think about visual performance cohesively as a set, or do you guys do it dependent on the arrangement?
I think for us, it's more of like, I think it's a bit of both, honestly. Definitely like dependent on the arrangement in sense of like, um, what feeling certain like parts of the set are like supposed to provide to the audience. But yeah, with the larger formations, like I would say like one example, that we use for like our Dharmavati Tilana is, the snake, formation that we did. And that kind of had to like that was in line with the whole storyline of like, in that Dilana it's basically talking about like Krishna and like Kalinga and like when he's dancing on the snake. So we wanted to kind of show that with the bigger formation. And same thing with like we did like like Swaram and like Konakol like back and forth. So we thought, okay, like with the back and forth, it would be nice to have like a battle scene, in this entire thing. So I think larger formations definitely, go more with like the storyline of our set, and it should like grasp the audience to like understand, where we're coming from, what the theme of the set is. I would say like that visual performance is thought about cohesively in terms of like the bigger picture, but certain like individual movements also matter. And the group formations basically go more with like the lyrics of the song or like the theme that we're presenting. So yeah.
Yeah, I think building on that, I think that it's really, really important to think of your choreography as a larger picture than just each arrangement. I think it really helps to convey whatever story you are trying to tell. And I definitely agree with Dia's point that she made earlier that the emotion is really important to try to convey with your choreo because it's just another level that you don't get with the singing. And so if you can have both of those combined, it really is a great way to get that across. And if it changes from arrangement to arrangement, making sure to convey that as well. And that can be both interpreted as, you have your larger picture with your emotions in your choreography, but also making each arrangement feel important.
I wanted to add like one thing about like the kind of last part of the question where if we consider kind of like voice parts, heights, and that kind of stuff when determining formations, because I think that that can be really interesting as someone who's 4'11" on my team, but we have a guy who's like 6'3". So we definitely do consider that. And especially like with the costumes, it's been really cool to see how a lot of teams incorporate their costumes into their choreo. Like shout out to the Macapella, and I think Harshini's on here. I saw that. I was like, oh my goodness. I think that costumes and heights are definitely very important to consider. So if I'm ever making like a triangle formation, I'm not gonna have like, people of like differing heights or like scattered costumes. So those are definitely some things to consider. And then as for like doing it cohesively or dependent on the arrangement, I think in an ideal world, cohesively would be so perfect. We all want it to be like one great set, but just to sometimes being a choreo director, I think of as all of us have learned, is that sometimes it's not always the easiest thing to like have your full vision and the full sound vision together. So there have been times when I've been like, okay, this movement I've been doing is sacrificing our, the way that we sound. So I might have to pull that back and be a little bit dependent on the arrangement. But ultimately, it's all for the best. So that's just a little, I guess, like side part that I thought of with this question.
Yeah, I think everyone covered everything, but I just want to hone in on what Sagarika and Harry both pointed out, which was you want to think of it cohesively in terms of group visuals so that you're going into it with a cohesive mindset. And at the end of the day, you're not um, making it like such a huge distinction between everything. But at the same time, what you want to highlight is the music, like they also both said. So you need to make sure you're highlighting musicality with your movements. And I would say within each piece, like Sagarika said, keep the group visuals maybe more theme focused. But honestly, I like to focus a lot more on the individual arrangements because they'll usually be so different from each other since you're trying to get those like versatility points on the rubric musically. And the best way to highlight that is really just to like make sure you're paying attention to musicality when you're picking your movements.
Another great segue to the next question. How do you guys maintain good vocal technique during choreography?
Um, for us, we usually like try to we definitely while we're like learning the arrangements before we even like get into choreo, we try to like implement exercises in like just moving in place while singing, just to like make sure that they're ready and they have the stamina to like sing while also moving on stage. And then we definitely we work on, showing um that like the emotion we kind of set certain emotions for each song like prior to starting the choreo so that they like can understand it and really like hone in on how they need to feel to portray it. And we also definitely emphasize like um making it like personal, like try to find like that meaning for themselves, so that they can bring out that emotion the best way that they can, because obviously everyone has different ways of approaching a certain meaning. So we try to like make sure that they understand that first for themselves, and then as we like go closer to comps, we have to like refine those emotions and things like that. Because definitely sometimes like people struggle with showing their emotions more than others. So yeah, through that we kind of just like drill it and make sure that they have it done. So
Um, I was gonna mention something about how vocal technique is obviously very important, like, because the way that we sound is at the end of the day what matters. But another thing that I know isn't a later question, but mic technique is also really, really important during choreography, and I think that's something that we really try to focus on vocal technique, but no matter how hard you work on vocal technique and good choreography, if your mic is this far away from your mouth, it won't, it won't show on stage. So that's something that I would say for anybody who's on the panel and kind of newer to the circuit to work on early, because having good vocal technique and mic technique during choreography will go miles if you start from the beginning versus like right before a competition. Oh, by the way, you have these really heavy things in your hand that you need to hold right by your mouth the whole time. So that's just a thing I would add there.
That's a great point. And one thing we do actually to drill that too is carry water bottles every time we do any choreography, even
mhm.
if you're not singing, because I mean, like I guess it's stamina too, but being able to hold up your hand like this for the entire set, that's like 10 minutes. That's pretty hard at first. And then
Yeah.
in terms of vocal technique, I mean, at the end of the day, your vocal cords and everything that you're using to produce sound, those are your muscles and those are part of your health, your physique. They need to be maintained just like any other limb in your body. And even if the choreography isn't as rigorous, like everything that you're moving or doing needs to be taken care of as if you were an athlete, I would say. Like we do that on the dance team, yes, because we're doing so much cardio, but at the same time, I think like the same thing applies to singing. And practicing good habits, obviously, for singing outside of choreography is the first step, I think, to having good technique anyways when you're doing choreography. And like really emphasizing that, making a point to, because at the end of the day, if you can't sing, then like what's the point of doing the choreography? I don't know. And then also while we're doing choreography runs, I know like when you do them over and over again, it can be very tiring vocally to practice both at the same time. And so we make it a point to do like certain runs full out, either at the beginning or the end of practice, when we have had a bit of a rest time or like good amount of time to warm up, rather than trying to do them repeatedly, especially right before a comp. You want to make sure that you're not tiring out your voice, and you're like staying up late and traveling and stuff. That'll all contribute to it. So those days when you're specifically doing comp related things, making sure that we're doing less of like the full out runs helps. And then the last thing I would say is the same thing that Sagarika mentioned, which is just the drilling of singing while doing physical movement. So what I like to do is obviously you need to warm up to get to that point, but start off with like very, very simple, maybe like side steps or just like ups and downs, whatever. But then you do conditioning basically at the beginning of each practice and make it a habit too, even if it's cutting into like other time. If you always block out and be disciplined with it, then it'll save you a lot more time later on in comp season.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything that's been said. I think definitely hitting home the point that warming up is really important before you're going to do any sort of singing, especially if you're doing singing with movement. Like it's really, really important to our team that everyone is ready to do both of those things full out before we, jump right into a rehearsal and are like, all right, we're gonna, run this whole set 3 times and you're gonna sing the whole way through. Like it's really important to make sure we're keeping track of everyone's like health. You don't want to get to a competition and have, well, first of all, it's important that everyone stays healthy, but also you don't want to get to a competition and not feel good. Um, and I definitely think that the other point that I had was as the teacher, I think a lot of people that we're talking to are either going to be helping with the choreography or have been creative directors, it's important to do it yourself and know what feels good and know what doesn't. And as you're going through the process of creating your choreography, to have those steps involved where you are taking out things that maybe don't feel easy to do, or that you know what's going to be more challenging and you put something less challenging right after it, or something like that.
One more thing too that I just want to add. Sometimes nerves and anxiety also contributes to how you're breathing when you're doing choreography. So, like Harry said, make sure you feel comfortable with it because if they don't feel comfortable with it or like they go into it with that mindset, then that can affect actually the vocal technique and how they breathe. Even before you go on stage, what we always do is do like a chant or some kind of team stretching, team meditation, just so that we're all calm and we can breathe.
You guys mentioned a lot of points that I didn't even think of. That's really awesome. How do you guys work on team stage presence and working on portraying emotion using your choreography?
I think this is definitely a big, big point on our team where it's really important that your choreography is taking into account how your team is presented on stage. I think from year to year, it's really easy to go from having a really huge team where you can do really spread out formations and, do a lot to having just a few, like losing a lot of members, and then you need to adjust. And I think that taking into account the group that you're working with is so important at the beginning of any choreography process to do, and that you work on that throughout the year by having choreography that explicitly is trying to, make your team seem either really big on stage and then shrink down really small or something like that, where you have these contrast moments where you can really convey different emotions well, and then also just getting people more comfortable with the choreography and with the overall creative vision is really important for people to kind of have their own branches into how do I show emotion through this move or through my facial expression or through how I'm singing.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with you on that, Harry. Like, um, showing the like creative process and what we were like thinking while creating the choreo itself is definitely like very important in order for the rest of the team to understand how we want to go about portraying this to the audience. And I think definitely we just like keep emphasizing that we're not only doing it to show other people, but we're also doing it for ourselves. And like trying to show like how you want those emotions that you're feeling when you're singing those like the songs in the set and you're like presenting the set, you want those to convey to the audience. But in order to do that, you have to really like understand that it's for like you're doing it for yourself and for this team. So yeah, that's definitely something that we emphasize initially. And then as we go on, I think I already kind of touched on this, but it's okay. As we go on, like we try to really refine those emotions and make sure like certain facial features like have their like what looks good and what doesn't, especially for like all sorts of emotions, like when you have to look sad and you're like longing for something, like there's definitely like a lot that goes into it. And so we try to analyze each and every person and tell them what works and what doesn't, and hopefully they present that on stage.
Yeah, I would say like when it comes to emotions, it's really important obviously to show like everything on stage that you're having a good time. Not even just having a good time, but whatever the song that you're trying to show. But something that's important that I've learned definitely over the years is that not everybody will pick that up as easily. Like if you're just like, hey, like everybody look happy during the song, there are some people who will have that expression at the beginning and then lose that, or like there's some people who will have it all the way through. But what's important to, I guess, like emphasize to your team from the get-go is that not just one person's emotion or stage presence carries a team. This is a team of 16 people. A cappella is very much a group thing. So, just like as any advice for anyone who's like starting to create choreo or anything like that, is to just like from the get-go kind of set that standard of we're all in this together. Everybody needs to like show emotion and try their best to have stage presence because it doesn't want to be like when judges are giving comments or things like that, you don't want it to be just like, oh, this person looked good, or oh, just this one song, I could really see the emotion. You want it to be like all the way through, like, wow, I really saw your passion and expression and stage presence all the way through.
I 100% agree with that. And I love this question too because I'm a firm believer that stage presence is more important than choreography in an a cappella circuit. Especially when, again, like I feel like stage presence is what complements the music the best and makes you a better singer. And one thing that we do is use the theme to your advantage and use the emotion of the song to your advantage. If you give everyone a character or something that they can feel, so that they're not just a background singer to the soloist, they are the soloist themselves, but in their own character, in their own story. Like that really, really helps. Sometimes people ask, like when I say, "Oh, feel this," they're like, "But what face do I make? Like what emotion do I convey through my body?" And it's like I think I know what I could do. Like I can just feel it naturally because I was the choreographer behind it. Like I know what I was thinking. But they're just being told choreography points. But if you give them a reason behind the choreography, so you explain like this part is when someone is feeling sad about someone they lost. Like think about a time when you felt that way. That's when it really feels authentic and comes out as authentic on stage. Another thing that's kind of silly that we do, but it does work sometimes when you're just trying to practice facials, is just doing facial runs. You just sing and do like the most exaggerated facials possible because on stage everything needs to be amped up by like 200%. You think you're smiling enough, but really you got to be smiling with your entire face and your eyes wide. And just like tiny facial things that I mean, like I guess my I've been trained classically too, but my classical teacher would tell me is like use your eyebrows. They're very important. Your eye and your eyebrow area are probably the most important for conveying emotion. So like lift them, like practice lifting them. You can do drills with moving your eyes side to side and up and down, and then also widening your eyes and then making your eyes smaller or like more intense. They're all ways to make your face pop on stage. And then for body language, practicing like doing shakes before you go on stage so that you're not stiff, making sure that when you're holding a mic, right, like your other hand is still loose and free, and just like having limb awareness in general helps what we also sometimes do is have videos taken of everyone, and then we'll like make a critique document for, oh, like this individual in this specific part, like you looked a little bit like lost, you didn't look engaged, blah blah blah, blah, or any other choreo points. That really helps because sometimes you're just not aware.
Yeah, also like to add to your point, Dia, like we also try to emphasize that to like look at yourself in the mirror and see how you're doing your facials because honestly when sometimes when we say things again like you said like if we just say feel sad some people genuinely don't know like how to portray that themselves so we tell them to go look in the mirror because they know like their best look I guess and they know what works for them and what doesn't. And then also, what was the last point you said again? Like just now, about, wait, I
Like
can't
the
remember.
facials and the body language.
Yes, the body language.
Okay.
Yeah, so we try to like continuously make like I'll have them like stand in place and just like move in place and feel like loose and like loosen their body and like bend your knees. Like we constantly emphasize like bend your knees, use your arms, and all that really helps to convey like the emotion that you need to convey. So
Just like a last addition to that too, when they practice on their own, because I feel like you should be practicing these things on your own, just like you would the musical part of it. You can also add your own individuality to it, which I think helps with stage presence too. It's not just bots like all doing the same thing. You have your own flair. Like you put like a little head flick somewhere, or you make a different expression at some point. One comment that we got was our team had good team chemistry. And so your individuality is important, but also if you make choreography specific to also interacting with other people on stage, feeding off of each other's energy really helps with stage presence, and it comes through with like team dynamic and sounding more in sync.
Those are some really good points. I know there's a lot of dance representation on this panel, which is really cool. But my next question is, how do you teach choreography to people who have no experience in dance or any sort of experience when it comes to movement?
Um, sorry, I'll go first. I was just gonna say, definitely patience is like the biggest thing because at the beginning, whenever you get your auditionees and then there's a bunch of new people and then it's like, okay, so they've never danced before, and now we're asking them to do a 10-minute set of like really heavy bending and all of that. It's just good to be grounded in like, okay, maybe I came from a dance background, but they didn't. But in terms of going about it, I think that if we have a room with a mirror, it seems like we do a lot better because when those people can see themselves and also see like if a person next to them has a lot of experience in movement, that kind of helps, well, like watching them not just from the back, but like seeing them against another person really helped. Having like rooms with mirrors and then also just like individually, I've done like a couple of one-on-ones and I think that those have helped too because in a whole crowd trying to, or in a team of 16 people trying to help someone who doesn't have as much experience when you're trying to get to a certain part in the set or like a certain section, you're just like, okay, let's just get through it and they'll figure it out later. It's good to like take time to give them that one-on-one to help with the extra steps that they might need.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that I don't know. So think about like if you are the teacher, like making sure you're offering your time and your patience to like, hey, I know that you're gonna have a harder time with this. Let me help you because it comes more naturally to me. So like I might have advice or have other people be ready to give advice if they, if you have older members on the team who came in and were struggling with choreo and now they know how to do it and know how to feel comfortable, they can have really valuable advice that you might not have because you are, more dance inclined and like have more of that like natural movement quality. But I would definitely say Dina is absolutely right. Like have those one-on-ones and know what notes to give in a group setting and what notes to give one-on-one or reach out afterwards. I think that's really helpful also to like not like blame or shame anyone for like having a harder time. Like some people are just gonna have a harder time picking up the choreo and that's okay. I think a lot of people come to a cappella as singers first, dancers second, or not at all. So having that like kind of understanding of how do I communicate in the best way that I want to give you feedback about how you are moving or your facial expression is the best way to use everyone's time.
That was so well said, Jerry. Yeah.
I can like definitely agree with both of you. Like I think patience is definitely one of the biggest like things you have to have. I like I think I definitely like I will say I struggled a little bit like coming into the team, like trying to develop that patience. But like you really just have to understand that um as dancers you're comfortable you're used to being on stage, you're used to like being like comfortable being uncomfortable. But like other like these people who haven't danced at all, like they're not used to that uncomfortability of being like a performer. So I would say like initially just like make sure that they're understanding like first of all just like the emotion that they have to bring out. I think once they can actually feel what they're doing, their body will respond like naturally. And then also, yeah, like using other members on the team and like trying to like get each other to help each other, and the individual like one-on-ones definitely help a lot. Um, we usually do that like sometime in the middle of the season, and just have like that one-on-one and explain like the little details that you can't really tell them in front of, everyone, because obviously no one wants to hear that. So just like having those one-on-ones and like consistently having them as well is like very important, because making sure that you can see that growth like in them only, because it's obviously very hard to focus only on like one person when you're in a group practice. So seeing them one on one like several times definitely helps, to see that growth and see how you can approach their problem. Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, they covered most of it. The only thing, like, I just try to approach it as a technical class. Like, if I were to go to a beginner's dance class, how would I be taught? And I feel like technique and foundations is how you learn things the fastest and like drilling them. And then later you add stylistic stuff. So like we always start off with I just scream muscle tension, or like let's do like certain drills for groove or things like that. But there are just like key fundamentals that you just gotta have as a dancer or a performer, to make yourself look cleaner, sharper, and bigger on stage, which is ultimately what's gonna help you with the choreo. So if you just break it down very simply like that and then drill those before you even start teaching choreography, I think that's pretty helpful.
Awesome. My next question for you guys is, what is your general timeline? Do you teach choreography side by side with arrangements, or do you teach it all together later?
I think we usually learn the arrangements first and then go into choreography, um, just so that like everyone kind of can understand the flow between each of the songs and how the set progresses. Um, and also like understanding like an overarching theme before getting into choreo is definitely important. And at the end of the day, like the visual is there to embellish the music. So I would say like we usually focus on the music first and refine that and get that to a certain point before we start implementing the movements. Yeah, you guys can add to that.
Um, I think that yeah, I think that timeline is a really like good way to go about it. I think specifically for us, we typically have in October or November a comp or not a competition, but a um exhibition with all of the a cappella groups on campus, not just the South Asian ones. And for that, we like to do choreo. So because of that, Hum typically has in the past and will probably do this year, we learn an arrangement, do the choreo for that, an arrangement, do the choreo for that, an arrangement, do the choreo for that. And we are very open to trying new things, but I guess specifically because of that situation, and also I kind of like that. By October/November, we have one full arrangement with choreo to perform. So that way people can get a sense of like especially the newbies can get a sense of what it's like to perform with choreography right in the first semester until, pushing it off until January, February, and then it's like, oh shoot, we have to like do this on a huge stage with, an extra 7 minutes. But I do really like the idea also of just like focusing on the music first and then adding that. So I don't think there's a right or wrong way to go about it, but specifically for Hum, I think we do arrangement, choreo, kind of side by side.
Yeah, we tried to do something similar, but this past year we were actually a first year competitive team, so we were getting used to how we would structure it. We did do arrangement then choreo, but the first arrangement and choreo took a long time, and then also you have AV as well. So I think going forward, I mean the first one will always be the hardest in terms of teaching too, because like people aren't used to dance yet. So I would still allocate more time for the first choreo and teach it like Dina said directly after the first arrangement. So it's like the fundamentals phase almost, but still focus primarily on AV stuff as well. Even if like the choreo goes over, like we had that thing happen this year where we didn't completely finish the choreo for the arrangement, or the first couple before we filmed AV, and then afterwards it was still like fine because people had understood dance fundamentals well enough to the point where they could learn the rest of the choreo a lot faster. But I will say, like doing the arrangement choreo is very helpful for also getting the choreo and vocal simultaneously down faster, getting
Yeah,
comfortable.
and I think that that last point is really important too, of like you can teach your choreo, at least how I found it, at like as your group is still getting familiar with your arrangement, because then you build some of that sense memory of like, oh, this is how it feels to sing it and do it together, and you don't have to learn how to sing it, learn how to do it, and then learn how to put it together. So I think that that arrangement choreo is a really, really great way to build that, and you don't have to have every single dynamic and every single facial expression when you start teaching choreo. You can say, okay, we have this arrangement memorized, and some of like the big important chunks we know are the important parts. Now let's add the choreo, and as we go through, we can highlight some of the big arrangement parts, some of the big choreo parts, what it feels like putting it together, and then you have a whole song arrangement choreo, and you can move on.
I actually have one last question before we open it up to everyone else. How do you go about your lighting, visual cues, and costumes? And how do you pair that with your choreography?
Yeah, that's so underrated when it comes to set planning. Lighting, I feel like, is such a make or break sometimes, especially when it comes to seeing facial expressions. So I, well, during the little lighting break thing where we go in and we give edits, I make sure before then I literally to the T, like with timestamps and everything, know exactly what I want to say so that I get everything down and I like time myself saying it all within whatever time limit we're given for that. So I'll say that like as my first thing. But in terms of actually picking lighting cues, uh, I definitely like highlighting different or the different arrangements with the lighting. So like even if I have multiple lighting cues within one arrangement, I'll do uh like a similar group of colors or like similar vibe of colors because I want to show versatility within our or between our arrangements through other visual aspects too. But I think like you always can use lighting to show dramatic changes or dramatic moments in your set. And I really liked a lot of sets this year that use spotlights, especially. I think that's really cool to highlight a specific singer or specific moment in the set. Um, and then in terms of like costuming, one thing we focused on this year was, well, one, representing school colors, but everyone does that. And I know a lot of teams reuse their costumes too. Maybe not everyone, but we definitely like to because I mean I personally really like UNC Blue. But aside from that, I think you can really accessorize even if you're reusing costumes. So like earrings, we had big earrings that everyone wore, and we got a lot of compliments on that at our comps. I really liked, I think Hum maybe did this, but like the flowers in the hair, and then a lot of teams they would have other hair accessories or things on like wrists or on your arms. Anything like that is pretty cool. I don't know if this is allowed but maybe you could try wearing accessories that also make sounds. So like there's ankle bracelets, like use those for classical dancing, and other things. I don't know if it's allowed. We used fans this year in terms of props. But I think aside from costuming too, I want to see potentially people using props.
Yeah, I think that when it comes to like lighting and costumes, those are two things that could like we could like have a whole other panel about them, honestly, because I feel like lighting is something that's so like it's kind of like, oh, we make the choreo and then oh, also by the way, you have these lighting cues due like 2 days before the comp, and it's like, oh shoot. Um, but there are a lot of different effects and stuff, and I think once you're just kind of thrown in the deep end, it's scary. But once you do your research on like stage lighting and things like that, you get to see that there's so many things that you could do and so many things that you like kind of just realized during a competition. Like I think it was shout out to Swarum. I think I was just watching their set at nationals and I was like, oh my God, I didn't even know that was a lighting cue you could do. So definitely could like research more into that. But I feel like the more you watch, the more you learn. So definitely watching other teams, comps, and things like that and being like, oh, that's something I want to try. For choreo, I mean, sorry, for costumes specifically, I think that it kind of also can depend on your team's budget. So like our team, like we haven't gotten new costumes in a couple of years because our budget just is kind of tight. But despite that, we were able to still make it unique through like accessories this year because this or like this past year we did Clue was our theme. So someone had the idea of like tying like different color wrist scarves to represent the different Clue characters. So that was a really cool way to like use our costumes to incorporate like a visual cue to tell a story, as well as the lighting for if it was a certain character, we would change the lighting, or a certain set, we would change the lighting. I do love like the idea of props and stuff. So going to Dia's point, I think that it is kind of a fine line because I can't remember who it was. But yes, but just like with props, it's like, oh, if it makes a noise, like does that count as an instrument? And it can get a little bit dicey, but I think that it is cool to see the a cappella circuit expanding into like trying so many new things and even with costumes, like incorporating that into choreography and stuff. So, um, I think that just like thinking outside of the box and also just, looking at not even just the ASA circuit, but I think that a lot of inspiration can come from outside of the circuit, whether that's DDN or the what's it called, ICCA circuit, all of that are I feel like very valuable contributions to lighting, visual, and costume stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely.
Oh yeah, go ahead. No, no, go ahead, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think I have a lot more to say about costuming than I do about lighting. I would definitely say that what you both said about lighting is very important. I definitely love to save all of my lighting sort of until the end because I want to make sure I have my full vision of what my choreo is going to look like. And I can keep it in mind while I'm doing my choreography, but you don't know what your lighting is going to look like until day of. You don't know, and this is no shade to any competition if something goes wrong by any means, you want to make sure that your team is prepared to continue without lighting cues or without anything else if something goes wrong with the costuming. And so I think that having that plan, but being able to adjust it in real time is really important. So I love to save my lighting until the end when I have that bigger picture and I can say, okay, if this doesn't work, is it going to mess up whatever is going to happen on stage. And I think that's an important piece to take into account. In terms of costuming, I think that that is really important. We just changed our costumes this past year, and it was a big change for us. I definitely think that budget is a tough thing to take into account. We don't get that much funding from our school, so it's something that we can do when we have the chance to. And I think one of the biggest parts about it for us is making sure everyone feels comfortable on stage in what they're wearing, both in terms of fitting and in terms of style, making sure that it is something that everyone is going to be okay with wearing. It might not be their first choice, but if it makes you look cohesive and everyone is willing to say, yes, I'm going to wear this and I'm going to feel good in performing, that's so huge to your overall performance. I also think that um sorry, I just blinked out. I think that your costuming is really important to your cohesion. We compete in ICCA, and I think a lot more ASA teams are starting to do that, which I'm like so happy to see. But it is one thing that makes us stand out from a lot of these ICCA teams is that we have really unifying costumes and everyone on stage is wearing the same thing, which a lot of other teams don't do. And so it's something to take advantage of and really make sure that your choreo, your arrangements, and your costuming reflect a certain cohesion because that gets you, to a certain level of professionalism, in my opinion. I mean, everyone can have their own take on that, but I think it makes you look really professional. So if you're choosing something that makes your whole team look good, makes you look unified in a way that makes you stand out, that'll be a huge piece that accelerates you above the competition.
Yeah, I think in terms of lighting, I also agree with you, Harry. Like we kind of just have it in like the back of our minds, like running, but don't like necessarily, I would say don't necessarily get too attached to like, oh, I want this certain way on like this certain like at this part, like in this specific time. Like if you do that, then it's going to be very hard to let go of that, and sometimes it just won't go the way that you envision it. So definitely like be open to changes and like constantly like just have different ideas running through your head. Um, but in terms of like special effects, like silhouette and like spotlight, I think definitely we have like like a slight idea before we actually start writing our lighting cues down of like, oh, okay, this would look really good if we put like a spotlight, or if this looked really good with the silhouette. Um, and with the like background lighting, I would say like we just definitely take into account like what colors signify certain emotions. So if it's like something, if it's like a very like song filled with like love, and like we just did like Rewrite the Stars, and like we wanted more of like that like pink color, like those red colors, like because it definitely like signifies that. And then with like the battle scene, like red is like definitely a strong color that would like, signify that like feeling of like being in a battle and like aggressiveness and all that. So I think colors are definitely important to consider. In terms of costume, we like this year, I think we tried to take like we had like a flowy top and like a skirt. So we tried to use that and in our like choreo, and like knowing that we were getting those costumes is very like important so that you can like implement that and like make it look more fuller like in terms of your choreo. So definitely in terms of costumes, like you said, Harry, also the cohesion between the two is also very important. And I think trying to use those like elements in the costume to amplify your choreo is also very important. So yeah.
Awesome, guys. We're gonna open it up to questions from the audience. You can either drop them in the chat or you can use the raise hand feature. And I think we've already have a question in the chat um, asking about warm-ups or drills, or do you guys have any specific examples that your team uses?
We like to we asked like each of our members to send recordings like basically every week, I think. So as we're like getting closer to choreo, or like trying like starting to learn choreo, we asked them to record like while running in place, um, to see like how their breathing is during, and like how they can control that breathing. And then also just like during like practice, we try to also have them run in place while like just being in a circle, and like see how they're able to like increase their stamina. Um, but yeah, if there's anything else you want to add.
This might be so silly, but when you said run in place first, I thought you meant like jog, and not like choreo for a second. I was like, oh my gosh. Um, but specifically for bending, we like to do, or I like to make people do lunges whenever we're doing like just like a basic warm up, just like really deep lunges, not a ton, but just so they can get the sense of getting that low, because especially on stage, whenever people are like kind of bending, you can tell versus when they're really like getting down, it like looks a lot better. So definitely like some lunges in there during warm-ups can go a long way.
I think that that's huge. We do lunges, and I think it's especially important for singing because it is such a stretch that one keeps your up the you when you're using proper form have your the upper half of your body upright, which is super important for singing and like keeping your diaphragm and your vocal cords like everything aligned, and then also to get your lower body stretched appropriately and like making sure that a lot of the energy that we have is from your lower body so that you're not like when we say bend over, you're not like hunched over, or when we say like, oh, you're gonna kneel down, it's not all coming from like your shoulders and neck. And that is a huge one where when you introduce that ahead of time, it helps people just use it and like later.
I think in addition to just drilling and conditioning, doing stretching before you start is important to just loosen up a little bit. I would honestly just search up a YouTube video of like a follow along stretch if you don't have like a set stretch routine already. But that's something like especially when it came to lunges, because we also do that, people just weren't able to bend their knees or like they felt awkward doing it. You could hear bones cracking, and I was like, guys, like we can't be injuring ourselves before we even begin conditioning. So, uh, do some kind of stretching at the beginning and end of practice, I would say. Also, for like vocal plus those drills. We do a lot of drills because I think the hardest part isn't even like singing while you're consistently moving when your breathing is regulated. It's when your breathing like suddenly has to change, either musically or in your movements, like you're starting and stopping and freezing. So doing a lot of like clenching or like sudden stops or sudden like accelerations while singing also.
Yeah, those are some really great suggestions. We had another question in the chat, but I think it's been resolved, but I'm going to say it out loud for the sake of the recording. So someone asked about programs for formations. I think we're 50-50 here, where half of you guys use like an online app called For Me Studio, and then half go the old school method of using just pen or paper or the whiteboard. Um, but yeah, so I think the next question in the chat is specifically for Sagarika. How do you guys conceptualize the flashlights and blackouts in your A3 set? And how did you practice the timing for that before getting on stage?
So, oh yeah, yeah, with the flashlights, we definitely like didn't want our entire hand to be like completely taken away by like holding like a full object like the entire time. So we decided that like maybe like a tiny finger light would work. That way we can still open our hands and do the mo like arm motions that we normally do in a cappella. In terms of timing, we definitely just like drilled it like a lot. Just clicking the thing on and turning it off, like, and even just first in place. And then we started doing it actually with the choreo. But definitely drilling it was like very important in terms of getting that on time. Um, Honestly, don't really have a better answer to that, but other than just like practice, practice, practice. But yeah.
I think we have time for one more question. Is there anybody else who has any questions? Feel free to just drop it in the chat, or you can raise your hand, or honestly just unmute. If not, that's okay. We can also finish on time. But last call for any questions.
And if anyone thinks of something later they don't want to ask right now, that's so okay. I think that all of our Instagrams are on the ASA post, so feel free to reach out. So yay.
Yeah, feel free to use the Discord to ask any follow-up questions as well, if you can't think of anything right this second. Um, but yeah, thank you so much, Harry, Dia, Sagrika, and Dina, for your wonderful insights. I personally learned a lot from this, and I'm sure everyone else here also learned a lot. Thank you guys for taking time off your days to do this, and thank you all for coming. Um, I hope you guys learned a lot from this.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
So much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, we lost two panelists, but that's okay. Um,